Hello and welcome to Regent Park, the past, the present, and the future. My name is Titi Lola and I will be hosting this series. This show discusses the history of the Regent Park area. We will be sharing stories from lived experiences by former and present Regent Parkers. Join me as we learn about the old and new Regent Park. Do not miss it. Welcome to Regent Park, the past, the present, and the future. My name is Titi Lola, and I'm your host for today. The aim of this show is to discuss the changing nature of Regent Park. Joining me today are two wonderful gentlemen who live in the Regent Park area, Omar and Abdul. Omar has been a resident of the Regent Park area for about a decade, and Abdul has been a resident for about 17 years. So I'm so happy to have you two here today with me.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming. Thanks for coming. I'm going to start with you, Omar. You've been here for so long. How was it like growing up and seeing the old Regent Park?
Well, starting out when I first came here, originally from Victoria Park, is that when I first came, it didn't really feel any different. Just felt like I had lived in a different area. I went to school with other kids my age, and I played outside in the park with my family, and I went home. That just kind of like was what it felt like when I was really small, and that's pretty much all I could remember. It didn't really feel like there were any issues in the area up until I got a little bit older, and I started to see a lot more things. Like I would see things like people smoking in hallways, or even seeing people or hearing gunshots and things related to that. It was, I don't know, it kind of taught me a lot of things, and kind of made me more wary and more cautious wherever I went. It didn't have to be applied to just Regent Park alone. Like whether I'm in a different city or a different country, it just always made me a lot more aware of what I was doing and where I was at a certain time. It just made me generally more, just kind of kept me safe, I guess, doing that.
When you say safe, do you mean the area was unsafe at the time because of the
I would
activities?
I would say that yeah. At that time, it kind of, I've heard of and I've heard of a lot of people getting into sort of like altercations involving like gun violence or any sort of drug trafficking and things like that. And I've actually lost a couple of like former classmates and friends because of it, right? It's kind of difficult to talk about because like I don't want to get too far into detail about it, but like hearing and seeing those kind of things happen to them is just kind of like something that I don't really want happening to like later generations, and I want that sort of thing to like end in like with this area. It's just something that kind of bugs me a lot to hear about, like especially when although it doesn't really happen as openly anymore, it's just a lot more discreet. I feel like that is almost like worse in a way.
Wow. I'm really sorry for your loss, and I wouldn't have you talk about it. But I'm wondering, growing up in the Victoria Park area, from what memories do you have compared with the Regent Park area? Was it a lot safer? Were these activities prevalent in the Victoria Park area as well? Or
not so much that I can think of. Like I remember being a little kid, and the thing is that when I moved here, it was only in 2001. Right, so I was fairly young at that time when I moved here. But I remember, I vividly remember actually running around when I was like 3 or 4 years old, obviously without my parents' permission, like without my parents knowing. But honestly, if I was to do the same thing at that age in Regent Park, I feel like there would have been a lot more consequences that could have happened past my parents just being really upset over the fact that I ran outside without them knowing.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. I would like to find out what it was like for you, Abdul. Do you share similar stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Omar hit upon a very common theme that you'll hear from a lot of longtime residents of Regent Park, in that, you know, there was a period of time where it certainly didn't feel very safe, and there was a lot of gang violence, there was a lot of drug trafficking, and so growing up as a kid, that profoundly influenced me, profoundly influenced how I view the world, and it's certainly something I remember quite vividly.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you share any personal experiences?
Absolutely. There's a lot of stories. There's just building on kind of what Omar said. I remember coming into my building and having all the smoke-filled hallways and seeing a lot of characters and people doing things that as a kid growing up, you typically, it's not something the typical kid would see, or their parents would let them see. And so, I certainly have those memories, but I also want to emphasize that, Regent Park there's a lot of negativity, and that's what people hear on the press often in the media, but I want to emphasize that there's also a lot of great things about growing up in Regent Park, and things that I'm proud of, and whenever I go out in the city and I'm talking to people that aren't from the area, I actually tell them quite proudly that I am from Regent Park, because there's a lot to be proud of coming from this community. There's a lot of great things going on. The people have inspired me, have made who I am today, and I'm quite appreciative of that as well.
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
So I would like to know if there were things about the old Regent Park that you miss. Obviously, things have changed now.
Right.
Are there any fun memories that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up for me, I loved basketball.
Right.
I lived and breathed basketball. I talked about the latest basketball shoes, the Jordans, with my friends. I used to watch videos of basketball players often. We played in the winter, in the snow, in the rain, in the hail, sun or shine or not. We would be out there. So that's a huge theme for me, and I think about that fondly in terms of my community. In the midst of all the negativity that we may have been exposed to, basketball was my solace. It was my kind of my meditation. It was what I would look forward to during the day. Whenever I worked hard in basketball, I would see the results of that. And frankly, growing up in the kind of neighborhood I grew up in, having respect from your peers was an important thing growing up. Having some street credibility, and I felt like I was able to get that through basketball.
Wow.
Yeah. I was a scrawny, small kid all my life growing up. I guess you could say I was sort of like the runt of my class, and I remember my mom always going to the doctor saying, when is Abdul ever gonna grow up? He's really small. But when I got on the court, I felt like, despite my looks or how small I was, I felt like I could gain some respect, and with some skills and with some speed, and people, no matter where you came from, how you looked, you could be from Sri Lanka, from Asia, Afro-Canadian, didn't matter where you came from. If you had skill on the court, that would be respected, and that was my version of an ideal democracy.
And I can tell you missed that.
I did, yes.
Okay, Omar, what were your fun memories from the Regent Park?
For the most part, it was just kind of things like, cycling, and sort of like cycling was a big part of my life, similar to kind of like Abdul's basketball. But it wasn't really much in the form of like getting respect or anything like that. It was just kind of something that I really liked. I liked getting out of the area and getting to see other places in Toronto. I remember when I was maybe in like 6th or 7th grade, where I tried riding all the way from Regent Park all the way to Victoria Park, and I remember being so like exhausted afterwards that I had to take the TTC back.
Oh God!
And like ever since then, it kind of influenced a lot of the things that I do, like with things like even bicycle touring or just riding in general. It's something that I really enjoyed. But I don't know. In Regent Park itself, though, it was mostly like getting to meet people like in the area and going to the community center and hanging out with people there. that that I
the
did a lot of.
community
Yeah.
sense
Mhm.
was there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like I wanted to get out of Regent Park per se. It's just I really liked seeing a lot of different areas and seeing them all really quickly,
Right.
which is what I really liked about cycling.
Right. Were you going to add something?
No, I was just thinking.
Okay.
Actually, I could relate to this. Cycling being an
I
important
can
part.
imagine what that was like.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to get around the community for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I think speaking of cycling, I feel like in the past community that we had, it was a lot more. I felt a little more cycle friendly. There's more, parks and kind of areas to cycle around. Whereas in this community,
Like more open.
yeah, a bit more open. Yeah.
Okay, so you both have shared personal experiences about what you grew up to see. I would like to know if there were issues that you can think about now that other residents, were facing, maybe cultural issues, racism, social issues, etc.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to start? Or?
You can go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think my parents immigrated from Sri Lanka, and I came here when I was quite young. Growing up with immigrant parents in Regent Park, certainly I felt like there was a lot of social issues we faced in terms of, just difficult access to things that maybe other people would find quite easy. Trying to think of some specific examples. I think overall, being from an immigrant family, we were kind of wary of the system. We were a little bit careful in terms of how we navigated the system, whether it's healthcare or the school system or even employment and work. And I think a lot of that stems from coming from countries of origin where there may have been, there may have been systems in place which maybe not been very fair or which may have discriminated a little bit. We were kind of worried, a little bit nervous about this new system in Canada. I don't know if you can relate to that, but maybe that was kind of my experience. But I think for the most part, I felt like quite well supported in the Canadian system. I'm sure there was a bit of maybe discrimination or what have you here as well. But I felt like it was an opportunity coming here to Canada to really make a better future for ourselves and our family. And that was kind of my overall,
Yeah.
I guess, my
That's great
experience.
to know. How about you, Omar?
As for myself, in terms of like social issues, of course, it was hard growing up in a place like Regent Park and going to any sort of high school that was outside of Regent Park. Like say, for example, my sister and I went to Northern. There was a bit of discrimination regarding my sort of social class and my race. But within Regent Park, or within the bounds of it, I was able to find a lot of people that were just like me, say like a second generation immigrant family, or even like a first generation immigrant family, and they were always accepting, and that's kind of like where I found sort of peace in the community.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with me today. And also thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you so much for watching. This is still the Regent Park, the past, the present, and the future. My name is Titilola, your host. Until next time, see you. Bye.